Me, 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 me. Yum, 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 yum.
Hello, welcome back to my channel. If you're new around here, my name's Kit, and this is my world. But not for today, because today my name is Jim. And this is Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff. And today I'm going to do a couple of tags by Jim. I'm going to do the P tag, and I'm going to do the Q tag. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Question number 1. P is for porridge. What did you have for breakfast? Coffee. Is there another breakfast food? Moving on. Question number 2. P is for painter. Who is your favourite painter? I have two. E.H. Shepard, who was a very famous, prolific and celebrated painter and illustrator of books, specifically children's books mostly. He illustrated Wind in the Willows, he illustrated Winnie the Pooh. But there's another one, a new discovery of mine, Larry McDougall, who is, I believe, a Canadian artist. He's brought out a book quite recently, or at least it's on its way out, and it's magnificent, and his art is just exquisite. In many ways, very similar to the work of E.H. Shepard. It's just so evocative. It's anthropomorphic animals and beautiful landscapes and environments. He's created a fantasy world using his illustrations. And I will leave a link to some of his art and to his website and a little video. And I really recommend that you check out the work of Larry McDougall, who is just a brilliant artist. P is for Police Procedural. What is the last police procedural you read? Jim, that's quite difficult to say aloud, isn't it? Police Procedural. What is the last police procedural you read? Well, it's The Dancing Girls, and I'm still reading it at the moment and enjoying it, although not as much as I ought to be, based on the fact that literally every single page of the book has written across the top,
The Dancing Girls, an absolutely gripping crime thriller.
And to me that's kind of a challenge. It's challenging me to enjoy it, and so frankly I'm not enjoying it as much as I might have done if I'd just been left to enjoy it without being told how gripping it was on every single fucking page. But anyway, it's a very good book. It's spending a little bit too much time on the police procedural stuff, in my opinion, and not enough time with the serial killer, who is the most interesting character in the book. I enjoy spending time with the serial killer, and I want more of that, please. P is for playlists. Have you created any YouTube playlists? Yes, my channel has many. I invite you to check them out. P is for publisher. Do you have a favourite publisher? Penguin and HarperCollins/Voyager. I'm not quite sure how that thing works, but many of my fantasy books have the Voyager emblem on them, so I'm guessing that they must be one of my favourites. But I don't buy books based on the publisher any more than I buy books based on the author. I buy books based on the books. Anyway, moving on. P is for pilgrimage. Have you made a pilgrimage, literary or religious? I visited Jerusalem twice and didn't much like it either time. So instead I made the perilous and frankly intrepid journey in search of the mythical Snake Valley, inspired by the explorations of two famous explorers known as Lou and M. You can check them out at Camper Vibe. But I discovered Snake Valley and there's a video of it, and I invite you to take a look. It's rather good. Please watch my video. P is for play. What is your favourite play? Peter Pan. I love Peter Pan. I've always loved Peter Pan. I know it's kind of silly and childish, but I like the flying. Also, In the Doghouse. You won't have heard of that unless you've seen my earlier video where I discussed In the Doghouse. It was a play that my dad was in millions of years ago that I worked on. Death Trap. Dad was also in that. I love Death Trap. It's a brilliant play and also a brilliant film starring Michael Caine and Christopher Reeve. It's a thriller and it's twisty and turny. The Elephant Man, my dad was in that as well. It's a brilliant play. Again, it was made into a brilliant film with John Hurt, but I actually prefer the stage version. And I saw that several times while my dad was in it, and I've also seen other productions as well. Amadeus, a brilliant play about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and his relationship with Salieri. And again, it was made into a brilliant movie. I've got it on my shelf behind me. And then, of course, there are the musicals. Now, for the first part of this question, I was taking the word play literally and just doing sort of spoken word plays. But of course, my first and primary love has always been musicals, and I love the big bombastic musicals produced mostly by Cameron Mackintosh in the 1980s and early 1990s, including such hits as Les Mis, Miss Saigon, Phantom of the Opera, etc. P is for Paris. What is the last book you read set in Paris? Well, for sure, Les Miserables, although there has been a little bit of debate between me and Simon about what actually constitutes Les Mis, because he tried to plough his way through the thicket of the actual proper book. I read a children's abridged illustrated version, which I found more fun. I still don't think I actually finished it though, but I love the musical. So I'm going to say Les Mis, even though perhaps it's a bit of a cheat. And also Outlander. There's a trip to Paris in Outlander, and they spend quite a bit of time there. P is for paperback. Do you prefer paperbacks or hardbacks? Kindle. But if you're going to force me to choose between the two, obviously paperbacks, because they're easier to hold, easier to carry around, they're more practical, it doesn't matter if you ruin them. Hardbacks are really just for display purposes, in my opinion. P is for many countries. Have you read a book set in a country beginning with P, or written by an author from a country beginning with P? Well, I'm going to cheat just a little bit, but although the question does list a load of countries, which I couldn't bother to mention, I'm going to mention a country that doesn't actually exist at all, but it's Pellucida, and there's a whole series of books by Edgar Rice Burroughs. They're fantasy books, pulp fantasy books. I bloody love them, and they're set in a country called Pellucida, which is at the Earth's core. You reach there by tunnelling in a machine. There was a movie called At the Earth's Core starring Peter Cushing and Doug McClure, the beefcake who made all the silly dinosaur movies. It's a wonderful movie, but I love the books. In fact, I prefer the books over the movie because they're more imaginative and there's lots of them, and there are nipples on the front. Anyway, moving on. P is for pandemic. Have you read any books about pandemics? Well, I haven't read it, but it's based on a book and it's a brilliant movie. My absolute favourite movie about an out-of-control disease/pandemic is Outbreak. The movie starred Dustin Hoffman and just about everyone else in Hollywood. And that's based on a book called The Hot Zone, I think. P is for poetry. Do you have a favourite poem you can recite? Well, in an earlier tag, I recited the entire opening soliloquy for one of my favourite shows, In the Doghouse, which I mentioned earlier. So it seems fitting for me to recite the epilogue for the same show. So this is from In the Doghouse. If you want to see me recite the prologue, I will leave a link in the description. Off the top of my head, I can't remember which video it's in now, but somewhere I recited the prologue. This is the epilogue for In the Doghouse. So that's it, folks. End of story. Not too bizarre, not too gory. Well, at least not for you, sitting there full of booze, a comfy chair. For Prickshaft, on the other hand, well, you can see me. Here I stand, in Bedlam, locked up, left for dead, bereft, alone, abandoned, Ed. Fall guy, scapegoat, what you will, future dicey prospects nil. Still, mustn't grumble, could be worse. I got away from Mole Cutpurse, who's back in favour, so I hear, teamed up with that Joan Shakespeare, running a pub, doing great, somewhere south of Cripplegate. Ben's gone back to laying bricks, and Luke's up to all his old tricks. The old con game, the mix agenda, that's right, she's back, luscious Lucinda. Courtly gallant, I hear you ask? Well, he of course fulfilled his task. He made his pile on the Isle of Dogs, but should have listened to talk of bogs and swamps, real and financial, his piles collapsed. How insubstantial is this life, our hopes, our dreams, don't you agree? To me it seems on close reflection that this place is not so bad. I see your face, you see mine, and it's not easy as time goes on all blithe and breezy to know where Bedlam truly lies. With which trite thought, a madman sighs, I bid farewell at close of day, and pray, gentles all, you've liked our play. P is for politics. Do you enjoy political books? Yes, but in a fantasy context. I wouldn't particularly enjoy reading about Margaret Thatcher or President Reagan or anything like that. I like reading about politics and machinations and plotting and conniving and intrigue and all the type of stuff you get in a really good, juicy fantasy. Court politics from a fictitious court in a fictitious land, because that way I don't need to get all angry about it. P is for philosophy. What is your reading philosophy? Why do you read the books you do? Reading is seeding, sowing a nourishing brain crop. P is for puffin. Do you have a favourite children's publisher? Hey, I used to be a member of the Puffin Club. For real? P is for pages. How many pages do you read a week on average? No idea. Counting is for Muppets.
Yes. Oh, greetings! It is I, the Count, and it's time to answer that fascinating question.
P is for Patton. Who, in your opinion, is the most successful military leader? I haven't the foggiest. And on that note, I'm not going to call it a day because we have another whole tag to do. So, coming up, the Q tag by Jim's Books, Reading and Stuff. Let's get cracking. Q is for quick. What was a quick read for you? A book you read in 1 or 2 sittings? Well, all of the Anastasia Krupnik books. I read those very quickly. They're very short and easy to read and thoroughly engrossing, so you can just plough through them. And recently I've discovered the same thing is true of the Suki Stackhouse books by Charlene Harris, I believe. I've been reading my way through those. Q is for question. You can ask me a question in the comments below. I answer every comment. Do you? What is your favourite question word? Why? Q is for quantity and quality. Would you rather read 10 okay books in a month or 1 very good book? 1. Quality always wins out over quantity. Q is for queer. Do you have a favourite queer author? Stephen Fry and Oscar Wilde. Both brilliant authors, both queer, and Stephen Fry played Oscar Wilde in the film Wilde, so it's all very neat and tidy. Q is for quiet. Do you need quiet to read? Shh. Q is for Quran. Have you read the Quran? No. Q is for quack. Why does Pei have so many ducks in his videos? I don't know, but I'm guessing it's sexual. Duck plugs? Q is for Queensland, Qatar, Quito and Quebec. Have you read a book from any of these places or anywhere beginning with Q? I believe Bill Bryson visited Queensland in his book Notes from a Sunburnt Country, which is also called Down Under, I believe. Q is for Quaker. Has there been a Quaker protagonist or character in any of your reading? Yes, Sheila Hancock. She wrote 2 autobiographies. She's a Quaker and also a famous actress. She was married to John Thaw, and she wrote the book The Two of Us, My Life with John Thaw, and then she also wrote Just Me. Q is for quote. Can you share some quotes about reading? Reading is seeding. Kitsworld 2021. Q is for quill. Have you had any writings published? Yes, I was a member of the Puffin Club and I used to write in, and occasionally some of my stuff would get published in the Puffin magazine, and also there were various industry publications, magazines for filmmakers. I sent in some stuff that was published, and also the Stage newspaper. I think they published a couple of letters as well. I don't know if that really counts, but yes, mainly Puffin magazine. I used to write little short stories for them. Q is for quiz, question and quilp. Quilp featured in which Dickens novel? Well, obviously The Old Curiosity Shop, published in 1840. I didn't have to check Wikipedia at all. And again, Jim has provided us with some bonus prompts. So, Q is for Queen. Do you have a favourite book about a queen, or even about the Queen? Well, the Devery books by Catherine Kerr feature a marvellous character called Belira or Belira. She starts off as a little girl and she is destined to become the Queen. But you get to know her when she's kind of ignored, shabby. She's a little bit of a Cinderella kind of character, but she's very clever, she's very bookish, and she's kind of brilliant and very charming and an interesting character, and I just adore her as a character. And you get to see her start off very young and grow into a magnificent queen, and of course you also get to see her in her past lives and her future lives as well, because that's the nature of those books. So I'm going to say Belira/Belira from the Devery books. Q is for Quetzal. Have you ever seen a Quetzal? Well, as spelled by Jim in his text, it's a municipal body, and I don't think you can really see one of those. But as spelled correctly, it's a colourful kind of bird, and I will leave an illustration. I haven't seen one in the flesh or in the feathers, as it were, but now, thanks to you, Jim, I've seen pictures, so thank you very much. Q is for quarrel. Have you ever argued about a book? The only time I can think of that I had an actual argument with someone was about whether or not I had returned The Wheel of Time to my friend Ian, and I insisted that I'd given it back to him. I had a very specific memory of giving it back to him, and then years later I found it in a cupboard and it turned out I'd stolen it. It's still sitting on the shelf behind me even to this day, but that's the only time I can think of that I've ever actually had an argument specifically about a book. And on that note, I'm going to call it a day. Thank you very, very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did and you haven't already, you know what to do. Please hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share, comment, do all the good stuff, and I will see you next time. See you later.